Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. Casper Ruud is a Masters 1000 champion. He wins Madrid. He beats Jack Draper. We're going to break that down. But first, let me address the elephant in the room. This is probably about as late as I've ever been to post Monday Match Analysis in all my years doing this, at least as far as I can remember. Other than maybe when Djokovic won gold at the Olympics, that was also a Tuesday release. But I'm even later this time, all right? So, to make it up for you, right, the silver lining to this is that it's probably the most loaded Monday Match Analysis of all time. I mean, anything you can think of is in this show. We're going to break down the Madrid final. We're going to do French Open power rankings. We are going to do the Rome preview. And we're going to do Aix-En-Provence thoughts, because that is really, along with some other complications getting back, which I keep saying because it keeps happening to me this month, is why this is late. All right. I'll talk about that later. Let's get into Casper Ruud. Drastic swing in Ruud's season. I mean, very drastic, right? He was not having a good year. But also kind of on par with what we've seen in his career, meaning he flips a switch. It happens all the time, basically once a year with him, sometimes multiple times in a year. And I talked about this in the power rankings last week, but if you look at his 2022 season, he struggled until Rome and Geneva and Roland Garros. 2023, similar thing. Things weren't going that well. He hits Rome, or it might have been actually Madrid that year, Rome, Geneva, Roland Garros, and he kind of just turned it on. Obviously, clay has something to do with that, but you can also look at other examples. Like last year, he loses something like 7 out of his 8 matches going into the ATP finals. There may have never been in the history of tennis somebody who seemed less ready to compete, less prepared to contend at the ATP finals than Casper Ruud last year. And what does he do? He gets out of his group and he makes the semifinals. So he can be like this. He doesn't have the reputation as a confidence player, but I really do think he's a confidence player, especially because when the forehand's great, it's a problem for everybody. When the forehand's not great, a lot of people can beat him on any given day, right? But the forehand was great, okay? And this is an enormous deal for Casper because he'd found himself in a lot of big finals, and a lot of them were one-sided. You know, the 3 major finals, the 2 Masters 1000 finals before this, and the 0-for record was obviously not going to help Casper moving forward, so it was important that he found a way through one of these big matches at some point. And the first win is always the toughest, so you hope if you're Casper, if you're a Ruud fan, that this is kind of going to open up the floodgates a little bit in these big matches, or at least allow him to compete at his best in the future and believe in himself in the future when he finds himself in these big finals. And in my opinion, he's one of the most likable personalities in the sport. Just my 2 cents. So good to see him have his moment like this. Both players came into this final without the loss of a set. Ruud beat Rinderknecht, Korda, Fritz, Medvedev, and Cerundolo. Draper beat Griekspoor, Berrettini, Paul, Arnaldi, and Musetti. In my opinion, both those runs are like about what you would expect at a Masters 1000. Tough paths, no doubt about it. A lot of good players in there. Neither of them strike me as particularly like abnormally easy or abnormally hard, right? So let's just jump right into the final. That's all I have in terms of like big picture context stuff with the Ruud title. Maybe there's more that I'm missing, but I really want to get into the final. We have monster weight forehands here in the liveliest of conditions. I know Madrid isn't the quickest, but when it comes to heavy forehands that are not only fast and get through the court, but also forehands that have that heavy RPM that kicks up off the court, I mean, it will really emphasize your weight of shot, the Madrid conditions. And both these guys have massive weight of shot. So who's going to hit their forehand better? Who's going to find themselves in more opportunities to use their forehand? These are the questions that I have coming into this final. And one of the big questions I have is, how is Ruud going to keep his backhand out of trouble? against Draper's forehand. What comes to mind? Well, some of the Nadal, Ruud versus Nadal matches come to mind. Those matchups were nightmarish for Casper Ruud, hitting his cross-court backhand into Rafa's forehand. I mean, that was like, it was a horrible thing for Ruud. So what's he going to do about that? As I'm watching the match, first off, I think this should be said. The conditions definitely close the gap between Draper's backhand and Ruud's backhand. Generally, I would say Jack has a better backhand than Casper, and I'm not as worried about Jack hitting his backhand cross-court as I am Casper hitting his. But in this case, especially kind of when you watch how the ball is reacting, like Ruud's backhand has a lot of height and shape and more topspin than any two-hander in the world. And he gets a nice big bounce off of this court. If it's deep, it's unattackable. It's really hard to step in and maintain, offensive court position when Casper locates his backhand with any kind of depth. Whereas if Draper's backhand is deep, it still kind of checks up, and Ruud could kind of hold his position and still hit big off of it. Like, I thought Jack hit a lot of deep backhands that Ruud was able to be offensive with his forehand off of. So that was interesting. There's also a couple of interesting ways that Casper was able to protect his backhand. So I want to get into those specifically. First off, this happened on some big points. Moonball backhand returns. 5-6 first set. Jack is serving. 30-all. Ruud throws up a backhand return. It goes 20 feet in the air and deep. And Jack hesitates, and then he goes backwards to let it bounce, and he hits a backpedaling backhand into Ruud's forehand, which Casper can attack, approach, put away a volley for a winner. Next point, it's set point. It's 30-40. Jack is like kind of, I don't know if he was serving volleying, because I don't know if he decided, I would maybe have to look at it again closer. I don't know if he decided to serve and volley before the point, or if it was a serve and survey situation where he kind of saw how good his serve was and then he tried to kind of sneak in. But Jack, after hitting the serve, actually moved forward into the court like he was going to take the ball out of the air. Ruud throws up this high cross-court backhand return, and Jack doesn't take it out of the air. He does the same thing again. He kind of has this moment where he's frozen, and then he backtracks and misses a forehand, super off-balance, terrible contact point. So two things are true here. Two things are true. One, these are awesome returns by Ruud. This is using height as a weapon. Using height as a means to disrupt your opponent's contact point, which Casper does really well on his backhand. I would also say the depth is a big deal here, because it doesn't matter how high in the air you hit the ball. If it lands on the service line, it simply isn't going to be effective. But Casper had both here. He had a lot of height and a lot of depth, and Jack didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do. What should he have done? Well, first of all, he made very late reads. Like, that's the first problem. And this is where I think he got so pissed at himself after losing the set. Like, he went on an absolute tirade to his box after losing the set. I think what Jack was so furious about with himself is that he hesitated both times. And what he probably wants to do is take this ball out of the air. Like, if somebody is going to hit a moonball return of serve and it's deep, you're probably wanting to take that out of the air. Now, the first one was actually angled towards his backhand, so that one maybe could have been a little bit awkward to take out of the air. The second one was at his forehand. He should be comfortable hitting the drive volley with his forehand. Or maybe, again, I would need to watch it again. Like, could it have been perhaps an overhead? Maybe, but more likely a drive forehand. And that's what he had to do here. unless you're going to get behind the ball and take it on the rise. But as soon as he hesitated, he was never going to get behind the ball. He wasn't going to get into the court enough to take it on the rise, and that's where he had to do this emergency backtracking. So again, just slow decision-making, late footwork. By the way, he trains with Jannik Sinner all the time. They're good friends. If there's somebody who I would say is great at not allowing opponents to hit a high, deep return, just taking it away, it's Jannik Sinner. If you hit a high, deep return against Sinner, he's hitting his drive volley. He just is, and he's going to hit it really well. So Jack might want to take some pointers from his training partner. Other than the moonball returns, there was Ruud's refusal to go backhand cross court off of Draper's backhand down the line trade. So Casper, well, first of all, Jack was guiding his backhand down the line far more often than usual. He actually is a pretty heavy cross court guy with his backhand, but in this match, he was way closer to the 50-50. And it's often just a probing trade, right? Low pace, low spin. And Ruud was like, all right, this is a very manageable ball coming in. There's no reason to give Jack what he wants and go cross court with these backhands into his forehand. I'll just go down the line back. So there's a couple of other points, and unfortunately, I couldn't get the footage for this. I would like to show it, but I can't. Third set, 2-all, break point. Okay, this is the break point in the third set that decides it. Second serve, Casper hits the moonball backhand return down the middle, and again, Jack lets it bounce and plays a neutral +1. I watch this back, and I once again feel strongly that this should be a forehand drive volley by Jack. But he lets it bounce, plays a neutral +1. Later on in the rally, Draper goes down the line with his backhand. It's the first backhand he got. He goes down the line right away. Casper goes down the line right back. Draper pulls his next backhand cross court wide for an unforced error, where I think he was, trying to take advantage of some open court and burn Casper, but he's attacking with the wing that he doesn't want to be attacking with, at least compared to his forehand. In the third set, with Ruud now up the break, Draper's best chance to get back was at 4-3. At 4-3, he has a 30-all. And this happens 2 times in a row for Ruud to hold serve. At 30-all, Jack has a neutral backhand that he would make this backhand 10 out of 10 times. He just wouldn't miss this backhand against most opponents. But off of a Ruud cross-court forehand, he tries to change direction with his backhand down the line. He tries to thread that needle, and he's slightly late, and he misses by a centimeter wide. It's one of those unforced errors. It's absolutely an unforced error by the definition of what an unforced error is. But against all other opponents, he's going back cross court, and he's basically not going to miss that ball. It's the pressure that Casper is now applying with not only his forehand in general, but also his runaround forehand. When you do go down the line, you better get it pretty close to the sideline, or you're not going to get it to his backhand like you intend to. On the next point, Jack takes a backhand down the line more aggressively, and Ruud goes backhand down the line right back. He actually wrong foots Jack because Draper really thought from that position that he was going to get a ball to attack off of Ruud's cross-court backhand. Jack ends up literally taking his right hand off the racket and slicing the ball because he's so off balance and wrong-footed. And Ruud attacks with the next ball with his forehand and forces an error. Bang, he's out of the game. That's a hold for 5-3. So that was huge. Moonball returns and going back down the line off of Draper's backhand down the line. Really important for Ruud. Now we've gotten to the part where I need to give you this number. Very important number. Draper ended up hitting way more backhands than Ruud in this match. Draper hit 180 forehands, 223 backhands. Ruud hit 257 forehands, 144 backhands. So let me get my calculator out here real quick so that I can make this stat a little bit neater. So Draper was 43 more on the backhand side, while Ruud was 113 more on the forehand side. That is massive. Part of this is court position and runaround desire. So Casper's standing further back. He's a little bit more desperate to find forehands than Jack. There are going to be some balls that Jack accepts as a backhand that Ruud turns into a forehand. Some of it is that. But some of it is also how Draper was approaching things. You have to ask the question, when you look at this stat, was Draper trying hard enough to play Ruud's backhand? If Casper's going to hit 257 forehands and 144 backhands, if that's going to be the spread, you have to ask that question about Jack. Now, let me start with what I think Draper did do well. He did serve and volley some into Ruud's backhand. I think he could have done it even more. He did clearly try very hard to hit his backhand down the line into Ruud's backhand. We just went over that. It's not easy for him always. It can be easier for Ruud to run around that ball. Ruud knew he just had to go back down the line off of it, so it didn't work that well, but Jack did try that. I'm sure it worked sometimes. But the Draper forehand is another story because he was not generally building through Ruud's backhand. He was distributing the ball pretty evenly to both sides, and generally when he had a ball to attack, particularly from the middle of the court, I felt like the bias was actually at Ruud's forehand, that he was kind of going inside out on it. Which, by the way, he very clearly preferred, as we discussed at length in the Indian Wells final against Holger Rune. But this is a pretty different guy here that he's playing. It's a pretty different matchup in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. Now, even against Casper, there are benefits to going at his forehand. And by the way, the split, according to the ATP broadcast stats, on Draper's forehand was 55% cross-court, 45% down the line. I'm a little bit unclear sometimes about how they score that when there are runarounds and stuff, but whatever. That's the stat that I have that's available to me. Okay, so there are benefits to going at Ruud's forehand. The ability to hit more winners. Like you have that avenue to hit more winners because of Casper's positional bias. As he's usually shaded towards his backhand side, there's a little bit more space on the forehand side to actually just get it past him. And then the unpredictability of it disrupts Ruud's anticipation. That's always a good thing. There's no doubt about it. But sometimes I was watching this and I'm like, at what cost? Like, at what cost are we getting to those advantages? Because Ruud's forehand is much better defensively than his backhand. And it's not very close. So every time Draper attacks into Ruud's forehand and doesn't hit a great shot, Casper neutralizes that point. Because he has really good sliding drive defense off of his forehand. He does not have that off the backhand. He does not have really good drive, like driven defense. It's okay, but it's not that good. And you can get him to slice more often, which for me, I think Draper wants, especially if he can recognize it and come in. So, the best way to approach taking advantage of Ruud's backhand, in my opinion, is to attack against it, approach on it. That's number one, approach on it, but also attack off of it. Go into it aggressively, attack on the next ball. Like, that's what I think was Jack's best pattern. There were plenty of moments, don't get me wrong, where Draper's forehand was punishing and bullying and effective off of Ruud's backhand, but I just think he could have gotten to it more often if he was a little bit more committed to playing that classic lefty pattern, like loop the ball into Ruud's backhand. And Jack was not really looking to do that. So that was questionable, in my opinion. Bit of a notebook dump. Clearly, Casper was the more physical player in the third set. He had stronger legs. He was moving better. Look, when Draper was on the run to his forehand, he was bailing out all the time down the stretch of this match. Ruud is fitter. He moves better. He wasn't needing to do that. Unreturned serves. That's a notable stat here. 29% for Ruud. 20% for Draper. That's unreturned serves. So I look at that. Whoa. Casper Ruud hit a higher percentage of unreturned serves than Jack Draper. That's wild. Now, the reason why I'm not getting into this in depth is because I don't really have a good theory as to why that happened. I can't really make sense out of that. I mean, I was thinking as I was watching that I didn't think Jack was having a great serving day, but I don't think that fully explains that number. Especially because, like, if that happened in Rome, I'd be like, all right, Ruud's return in those conditions, it's too tough to get cheap points. It's not going to happen. But in Madrid, that's where I have trouble just giving, I don't know, that's where it almost, again, I'm kind of baffled by the stat. I can't make sense of it. And sometimes you have to kind of punt because I don't have a good theory as to why that happened. Ruud's forehand, slightly more efficient as a finishing weapon than Draper's. Just a little bit more efficient. I mean, I thought both forehands performed well. I thought it was a high-quality final, by the way. I haven't said that, but I think both players played well. And I just think on balance, the reliability was a bit higher for Casper, and the damage was maybe a slight edge to Draper, but probably not after the first set. After the first set, it felt like the damage was pretty even between the two forehands. Draper's backhand pass. This is the last item of the notebook bump. Draper's backhand pass probably could have swung this match, potentially in the other direction. He had a pretty decent look on the one break point he had in the third set at 1-2. He had a good backhand pass look. I think Ruud actually had to chip. No, I think that was a different one. I don't think it was a chip approach, but it was makeable. He put it in the net. Then he had, and then here's what I'm thinking of. In the game that Jack was broken, the very next game, at deuce, there was kind of a weird point where Draper hit an unintentional short ball, and Ruud had to hit a slice backhand approach down the line into Draper's backhand. Again, this is not an easy pass, but it's a regulation pass. And Jack hit it really central, and Ruud had a pretty comfortable volley off of that chip approach. So I was just kind of looking at that. Draper hit one backhand pass that was like outrageously good as well that you'd probably see if you saw the highlights, or if you watched the match, you probably remember it. But on balance, I felt like 2 big points, makeable backhand passes. Draper couldn't get it done. And I think that is worth mentioning. So that's it for my analysis of the Madrid final. I just now realized that I did forget to mention something at the start of the show when I was teasing out everything I'm going to do. I'm also answering mailbag questions because I put a post out for a mailbag that I was supposed to do Monday, and for a lot of different things that happened on Monday, I could not manage it. So now I'm going to also do a mailbag. So again, literally it's everything. It's a mailbag. It's a preview. It's an analysis of a final. It's power rankings. It's never happened before in the history of the show. It's crazy. All right. Let's do French Open power rankings first. All right. This is last week's French Open power rankings on April 22nd. I'm going to quickly reveal the March 6th rankings, and we'll just go through some of this stuff. All right. This is the March 6th power rankings. Let's just go through some of these names. So Alcaraz obviously did not play. He stays put. Zverev almost lost to Davidovich Fokina and then lost to Cerundolo in straights, who he now trails in the head-to-head 3-0. So Zverev is going to move down 1 spot. Sinner did not play in Madrid, but he moves up 1 because of Zverev's loss, which is kind of on brand, right? I feel like that's been the story of the last 3 months, is that Sinner seems to move up without doing anything. Djokovic, A second listless opening round loss for Novak. He is now 0-2 this clay season, and he's pulled out of Rome. So he is going to kind of plummet here down to number 8. So Djokovic is down 4 spots. Holger Rune retired in the first round with knee pain. Kind of predicted this, right? Like some people on my preview, and I got plenty wrong in the preview, but one thing I got right was like I just didn't think Holger was built to actually do well in Madrid after winning Barcelona, because I just think physically and mentally. But yeah, I think it's both, honestly. I don't see him as a guy who's going to do great in back-to-back events like that. And yeah, he retired with some knee pain. So Holger moves down 1 spot. What I'll say is, like, I'm not getting on a guy for getting hurt, but also it's not good that I can predict that, right? Like, it shouldn't be, I know that Holger physically or emotionally just isn't really going to be able to follow up a big week. But that's kind of where we're at right now. All right, Draper. No, I don't want to talk about Draper yet. First, let me talk about Ruud. Ruud wins Madrid, so now he can kind of reassume his position as the ultimate Tier 2 clay guy, which I think he's been for the last few years. So he moves up 2 spots into number 4. Musetti, another deep run for him. He beats 2 guys on the power rankings, beats Tsitsipas and de Minaur. So Musetti moves up 2 spots. He is now at number 5. De Minaur, 4th round loss to Musetti. It's another week for Demon of just beating who he's supposed to beat and then losing when he goes up against someone good. Like right now, that is what he is on clay. He actually moves down a couple spots. And Arthur Fils, he lost first round to Comasagna. He's out of the power rankings now because of that result. Tsitsipas got by a tough matchup in Struff, but then lost in straight sets to Musetti. Stefanos Tsitsipas is also out of the power rankings because of that. Newly added to the power rankings is Jack Draper, Madrid finalist, 2nd in the race. I just needed to see him do something on clay before he could be in here, and he's done it. I wouldn't go crazy with Jack about like he figured out clay narrative. I wouldn't go nuts, because at the end of the day, it is Madrid. It's still Madrid. And that's different. It's different than all the other clay, but it's something. And Jack slots in at number 7. Also, Francisco Cerundolo with the run of the semifinals. He's going to come in at number 9. Again, I don't know. I got to look, right? I don't know if I have enough, like a ton of objective and statistical weight to have Cerundolo over Tsitsipas and Fritz and Fils and Medvedev, but actually not Fils, but the other 3 guys. But it just feels kind of right. And again, if I look at it in a couple weeks and I look at the numbers and Cerundolo doesn't make sense anymore, then I'll just correct it. But for now, I feel like he should be at number 9, even though I haven't really fleshed that out numerically at this time. So, especially for the audio listeners, I just want to go through it one more time. Here's the French Open Power Rankings as of March 6th. It is Alcaraz, Sinner, Zverev. That's the top 3. Then it goes Ruud, Musetti, Rune. That's 4 through 6. Then it goes Draper, Djokovic, Cerundolo, and de Minaur. That is 7 through 10. In my next out, it's Fils, Tsitsipas, Fritz, and Medvedev. Okay. What's next? Should we do some mailbag questions before we get into the Rome preview? I think so. Let's do that. Okay, so there's a couple here that I want to get to for sure about Alcaraz's documentary. I'm just going to read both comments. So the first one is from Mr. Rasafferty. What is your take on Bautista Agut's statement on Carlos? I didn't see the documentary yet, but is he partying too much? Could this be why he is so inconsistent, or is it just noise? Then this other one from Tennis Fan. Hi, Gill. Do you think the criticism Alcaraz received after his documentary is justified? For example, Bautista's comment. Many reviews seem to highlight Ibiza and partying. Did the documentary actually help his image, or do you think it might backfire? That whenever he loses in the future, people will bring up partying and accuse him of not taking tournaments seriously. In 2023, after RG, he went to Ibiza, then won Queens and Wimbledon. In 2024, after RG, he did the same, lost early at Queens, but still won Wimbledon. In 2025, we can probably expect a similar pattern. He said Ibiza helped him, and he plans to do it again. But what happens if next time he follows the same routine and fails? Because that day will come. Yeah, this is fascinating stuff, right? So I watched episodes 1 and 2 of the Alcaraz documentary. I haven't gotten a 3 yet, which I'm most I'll just say this. I'm most interested in 3 because episode 3 is where, like, that's where for a month and a half he played awful tennis. Like, he couldn't play good tennis at all after the Olympics. And I'm curious, are we going to learn something about that period in time? To me, that's interesting. So I'm hoping that that is fruitful, that part of the documentary. Because through the first 2 episodes, it is very clear what the angle is. And look, you have to find a way. Like, if you're going to make a documentary about Carlos Alcaraz, you have to find a way to make this thing interesting. This is the entertainment industry. This is the attention industry. You have to figure out a way to make this interesting. You make something interesting. This is one of the most basic tenets of storytelling. There has to be some sort of conflict. There's no conflict. There's really no story. And you don't have anything. When you're going to go out there and just decide, hey, we're going to make a Carlos Alcaraz doc, versus the other model of sports documentary where something crazy happens and then you realize in the 5, 10, 20, 30 years later, wait, that was insane. Let's make a doc about that. Now, if you do it in that direction, you already have something that is inherently intriguing for whatever reason, and you no longer need to. Hopefully, you're at that point, you're not reaching, you're not sensationalizing, you're not manufacturing the storylines. But with this model, we're going to film Alcaraz, and we need to figure out a way to make this compelling. Yeah, there might be some sensationalizing. For me, after watching 1 and 2 of the doc, it didn't get me to believe that Alcaraz is a party animal. And there are 2 ways that I've seen this done in sports that truly make for very intriguing documentary and very interesting just sports storytelling. And the first way is the Dennis Rodman way. Dennis Rodman, for those who don't know, he played for the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan. He also later played for the San Antonio Spurs. I believe he went back to the Bulls after that. And Dennis's thing was the guy would be out until 4 or 5 in the morning and show up to practice at 7 in the morning. And he could practice well. Like, he wasn't a dead man. And it was this marvel of like, what the heck is this guy made of? Like, how is he doing this on 2 hours of sleep? It's game 4 of the NBA Finals. What is going on here? That was interesting. That was part of The Last Dance, which got people's attention. But before The Last Dance, there were a million other examples of journalists and so on documenting the whole Dennis Rodman paradigm. The other way this can go is the Dwight Gooden way. The Dwight Gooden, he was a pitcher for the Mets, and I'm sure there are also a million other examples of sports documentaries that tackle this thing. There's also the story where somebody gets into drugs or somebody gets into partying or somebody gets into whatever vice, and it actually destroys their career. They actually kind of go crashing down. And that is always, that's tragic, but also makes for obviously intriguing sports documentary. Was this Carlos thing, was that either of them? Because at no point am I like, whoa, wait a second. Carlos spent 5 days in Ibiza and a month later he won Wimbledon. What a crazy guy. That's a crazy guy right there. No. Not at all. I mean, come on now. The worst thing that happened was he lost to Jack Draper at Queens. Is that the he went crashing down? That's the he lost to Draper in Queens. Come on, right? So you don't have either thing. You don't have the, wait, you're giving me the details of how much Alcaraz is partying and he's still winning Wimbledon? I didn't get that. I also didn't get the crashing down. So I just got this sort of lukewarm, manufactured feeling narrative of Alcaraz does some partying, doesn't seem like he does a ton, doesn't seem like it's out of hand, but he does some partying that Juan Carlos and Moreno, his agent, what's his name again? Albert Moreno, I believe. That sometimes they feel uneasy about Carlos going out and, going on a week vacation. But I'm sorry, like a 1 week vacation after Roland Garros when, Wimbledon then is 3 weeks later. It's just not the most insane thing in the world, I don't think. So it's my thoughts on it. So to address the other two questions in these comments, do I think the documentary helped his image? I don't think it moved it one way or another. In an ideal world, the documentary isn't to help an athlete's image. That would be like a PR piece. But hopefully it is a good enough window into the person and the athlete that people become more interested in them. So, I mean, hopefully it did that for some, but I don't get the sense that it was a good enough piece of documentary that it really worked outside of the tennis bubble. I could be wrong, but that's my sense. Then the other one is on Bautista Agut's comment or statement specifically. RBA basically said, I don't think that he is going to win Grand Slams going to bed at 7 a.m. And then sort of moved the goalposts on that statement and said if he wants to match the three greats, he'll have to play at a high level for 15 years and essentially saying tennis is demanding and that Carlos would need to change his ways in order to match the level of the big three. So, yeah, that could be true. Most people, as they age, party and go out less and less and less. That's not always the case, but it sometimes is. I think Alcaraz at 22, it is likely that maybe at some point he feels the need to do a little bit less of the Ibiza party binges. But also, I just don't know to what extent is he actually doing this stuff. And that's the real question here. And it's not a question that the documentary truly answered in any sort of detail. If your best evidence here that Alcaraz parties too much is that he took 5 days after losing in Roland Garros in 2023, and then he took the 5 days again after winning Roland Garros in 2024, I'm just not convinced that this guy is some kind of degenerate. I'm sorry. All right. Next one is from Andrew Liu. Hi, Gill. I'm sure you watched the Nadal interview where he basically said he knew how to game plan against Fed, but against Djoko, it was just to play your best tennis. What do you think Novak's mindset is when he plays Fed Nadal? And same with Fed against the other two. Thanks for speculating. All right, so Big Three Tactics question, got 19 likes. These always play. Why not, though? It is fun. Let's take a little trip down memory lane. I'm not surprised that Nadal said this because Well, okay, so what he said was versus Federer, he would basically always try to kill the backhand, and the only time that he would go forehand down the line is when he thought he could hit a winner or he needed to make space on the court to just go back to the backhand again. That's what he said about playing Federer. Against Djokovic, he said, we can have a strategy, but at the end, it's really just about playing well because there's no clear strategy, meaning it's not an obvious pattern or a path that is going to unlock victory. But he did say he started to use this backhand slice more and sometimes playing more up the middle. So there are some things that he did do against Novak. He wasn't just playing mindlessly. And that doesn't surprise me because Novak is so balanced and well-rounded that it's just not surprising that Rafa felt that way. And I've said this often in covering Novak. There's no blueprint here. There's just not. There's no way to beat him. So much tennis strategy is built around what's the weakness, why is it weak, when is it weak, how do I get my strength to go head-to-head with that weakness, if at all possible. Like that's what that's what strategy is really all about. And if the weakness isn't there in the first place, there's not a lot of strategizing to be done, plain and simple. Now, what if Djokovic were asked the same question that Nadal were asked? Like, tactically speaking, how do you go about the Federer matchup? How do you go about the Nadal matchup? I would say the big difference here when Novak plays Federer is that Roger can slice his backhand cross court against Novak. That's a good option for him. Against Rafa, that wasn't effective at all. Like Nadal hitting a slice backhand into Nadal's forehand was just, bang your head against a wall. You might as well stab yourself with a fork in the eye. Like it's a terrible idea. But against Novak, it's a far greater emphasis, in my opinion, on making Roger hit running forehands and then running him in general. So it's the same goal as Rafa, because Rafa's goal was to really avoid giving Fed middle forehands. His middle forehands are just so deadly, the best out there. That's what we need to avoid. The best way for Novak to do that was usually to use the backhand down the line a lot and to move the ball around as much as possible against Roger. I know it sounds simple, but I really think that was the approach. But never to shy away from making Roger hit the running forehand, where Rafa probably was... He didn't really have the tools to do it as much, right? He didn't want to hit backhands cross-court into Roger's forehand as much as Novak can hit forehands cross-court with the short angle into Roger's forehand. And then, obviously, Rafa had the backhand, the forehand down the line. The problem is, if he didn't finish off of it or do serious damage off of it, he kind of lost his ability to stay in that ad court pattern that he wanted. So he had to be really selective about when he went forehand down the line. For Djokovic versus Nadal, I think the deuce side cross court, Novak feels good. And in the other cross court, there's just a specific approach that he probably needed to implement, which is, okay, so to me, it always looked like Novak needed to play as early and as fast as possible into safe targets so that he wasn't taking too much risk. But he needed to play as early and fast as possible into Nadal's forehand, rush Rafa's forehand, attack off of it. For me, that was always what Novak was looking to do. If you go slow into Rafa's forehand, that's the death trap there. I think if you try to play his backhand a lot, he figures out ways to get the point into his forehand. Like he maneuvers his backhand in ways where it gets it back into his forehand. So I think what Novak really did was, I'm going to go into the weapon, which Djokovic likes to do, but I am so good at taking my backhand hard and early that Rafa's just rushed. Rafa's being rushed on his forehand. And now I'm taking away his weapon by going into his weapon. From Rafael. After the recent Djokovic loss in Madrid, At what point do we accept the fact that he is probably winding down? I know he is still capable of great tennis, but his Miami run is seeming more and more like an outlier as the year progresses, and he begins another losing streak. All right, so the last month in Djokovic world gives you whiplash because you have the run of the Miami final where he beat a lot of guys in very dominant fashion. Yes, he lost a final that on paper he would most certainly want to win. But to go from that to being so listless as to not look anything, not even look like a top 50 player, okay, you lose 3-4 against Tabilo. You lose 3-4 against Matteo Arnaldi. They're both good clay court players, but the way he lost was just as concerning as the fact that he did lose. That is a wild swinging range of results right there. To the extent that the range is so large and the last two have been so bad that I just kind of feel like something is probably going on that we don't know about. And I know that sounds like I'm just like giving Djokovic a pass, but I do have some issue with being like, yeah, he's just old. Like, this is what happens to old players. This is not what happens to old players. Okay? Do aging players get more inconsistent? Yes. Do they generally decline? Yes. But normally it's not this drastic and wild. Didn't look like this for Nadal last year. Rafa wasn't going to make runs at all. We knew who he was. He was probably like the 25th best clay court player in the world last year. That was Rafa Nadal. We knew who he was. Andy Murray, he didn't do this. When he kind of came back from the hip surgery, it was very clear who he was. He was like he wasn't a top 30 player. He was never a top 30 player. He wasn't wild swinging up and down. Roger Federer, he wasn't losing first round. He wasn't going on losing streaks. That never happened. So to say like this is just totally normal for the guy to make the Miami final, for the guy to make the Australian Open semifinal, and then like 3-4, just horrible performances. To be like, yep, that's normal because he's old, it makes no sense. It's not normal. Now, could it be? Could it just be the motivation factor? And could that be like the thing? Maybe. I mean, I will throw this out there. Let me throw this out there. At majors since the start of last year, Novak Djokovic is 21-4. Alcaraz and Sinner have definitely been better than that. Zverev, their records are very, very close. You could make an argument that Zverev has been better. You could also probably make an argument that Djokovic has been better at the slams if you go since the start of last year. So sample size of the last 5 majors. So Novak Djokovic is at slams. And if I go back even further, then the case grows stronger, but I won't do that because we're trying to be as recent as possible. Since the start of 2024, he has been either the 3rd or the 4th best player in majors. Full stop. But at Masters 1000s events, he is now 16-10 in that period of time. 5 times he has failed to win multiple matches in Masters 1000 main draws. So we are now seeing an enormous gap in the productivity at majors and Masters. That is very clear evidence that this has a lot to do with just how much Novak can get himself to care. How much he can get him. And I always like to also stress that it's not just during the matches. It's also caring the week before. It's also caring the 2 weeks before. How hard are you training? How hard are you preparing? And this stuff matters a lot, along with when you're actually in the heat of battle, how much fire do you have in your belly in that moment as well. Both things matter. But let's definitely acknowledge what a big difference there has been between Djokovic at majors and Masters. I think it's very important to certainly come to grips with this. And Novak said, this quote was aggregated a lot. He said, "I have a new reality." Let's come to grips with this, and let's be very, very clear. The new reality is when Novak Djokovic enters a best-of-3 set tournament, he could lose to anybody. It is no longer a surprise when he loses first round. It's just not. He could lose first round to anybody. And then there's the pulling out of Rome. Goes back to my overall feeling, like, what is going on right now? Like, something is happening other than he's 37. Okay? Because being 37, newsflash, it's not a reason to pull out of Rome. So I just think something is happening at the moment. I don't know what it is. Because it shouldn't be this wildly swinging from Miami to what we saw thereafter. And even Australian Open to, what we saw thereafter and what we've seen in the lead up to this Roland Garros. He has probably been, like, if you think about it, there's probably not a single player on the tour, not even close actually, who's had a bigger range between their best and their worst this year than Novak Djokovic. All right, next one from user. Hi, Gill. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on comparing Alcaraz and Wawrinka's careers. This isn't to discount either player, but I was wondering if you think at this point we can say that Alcaraz has had the better career. Many will argue that Wawrinka had to face all of the big three and other strong players in that era, but I was wondering how strong of an argument that was and if it is a valid argument. How much more would Carlos need to win to have the clearly better career, since right now he has 1 Slam and 5 Masters and career high number 1 over Wawrinka? Well, yeah, okay. Alcaraz's career is already better than Stan's. The difference in Masters 1000s titles, people are actually surprised when they hear this. That's how much respect and street cred Wawrinka has in these parts, because I get comments like this all the time, and this got 17 likes. Wawrinka has so much street cred and so much respect, and I saw it in person in France, and I'll get into it, right, later in the show. When you tell people Stan Wawrinka has 1 Masters 1000 title in his career, people are stunned. People are like, really? He's got 1? Yeah. He's got 1. Alcaraz already has 5. Alcaraz has not only been number 1, he has a hefty number of weeks at number 1. I don't know what the number is, but he's spent some time there. He's already had a better career than Wawrinka. Is there anything more to talk about here? Let's look at the win percentage. And here's what will go against, the idea. Ooh, I have an idea. Let's do this stat, everybody. Let's do this stat. Let's see what the win percentages were against players outside the top 10. And the reason why I want to pull this up, what the heck, Tennis Abstract? The reason I'm being rate limited, why am I being rate limited? I only have one other tab up. I gotta put a call into Jeff Sackman. I can't pull up Alcaraz's profile. Come on, there we go. All right, let's sort by 11 plus career, and let's do ATP only. Okay, Alcaraz is 196 and 40. So 83% win rate against players outside the top 10. I want to just get the big three out of this so that they're not a part of the conversation. And even if you think that the top 10 overall was stronger in Wawrinka's era, let's take them out here. And let's go Career, ATP. Okay. Stan, oh my goodness. Stan is 66% win rate against players outside the top 10. So you have 83% for Alcaraz, 66% for Wawrinka. Guys, this is not a conversation. This is not close. And because Stan has the 3 majors where he beat the greatest ever, he has all of this well-deserved adulation and respect that have people completely kind of overestimating his overall body of work. Next one from Hayden. Hi, Gill. Do you think Jannik Sinner will need any time to get back into normal match play? Do you foresee any upsets after his suspension? Love the content. Keep it up. This is the big question, isn't it? The question of the week coming into Rome. So glad you asked. I've got an answer. I am confident in saying that Jannik Sinner's preparation for Roland Garros 2025 will be better than it was ahead of Roland Garros 2024. Last year, let's remember, Sinner had a hip injury in Madrid. He pulled out of Rome with the hip injury, then caught some viral illness that he said basically had him horizontal for 2 weeks. He did not train. He did not play tennis for 2 weeks because of this illness. Must have been really, really bad. He got on court to begin his prep for Roland Garros. Again, after 2-3 weeks without playing at all, 9 days before the tournament started. And he made the semis. And he pushed Alcaraz to 5. That was compromised prep. This year, it's true. He lacks matches. 3 months of no matches. That's not ideal. That is not ideal, but it is far better than not being able to work out, train, do anything physical for weeks at a time before you have to scramble to try to get ready 9 days before the tournament. Instead, he gets to play Rome. He might play Hamburg. And what has he been doing the last 3 months? Look, I'm sure 3 months out, it was difficult to maintain the intensity in the training. In fact, he might have just rested a whole lot for a month. That's actually good. Like, players need more rest. But I'm sure he's been ramping it up the last, 6 weeks or so. Probably had a chance to work on some stuff. Probably had a chance to lift some heavy weights to try to build up his muscles so that he can be as durable and injury-free and strong as possible. Like, this ain't so bad. Match toughness lacking? Definitely. Not ideal. He'll want to get some matches in. There's no doubt about it. To start to feel comfortable with the nerves, with the pressure, with the speed of the game, with the intensity of it all. He'll absolutely have to do all those things. But unless there is some sort of mental difficulty in coming back from this, unless that is going to be a major issue, I think he's going to come into this year's Roland Garros in way better shape than last year after the suspension. And I don't mean to discount the psychological part of all this. Coming back from a suspension, like, it's a big controversy. But can you really blame me for discounting when, like, remember the US Open last year? There was an absolute media frenzy around what the ITIA had decided. That was literally, that news literally dropped during qualifying week. It was a total mess. If anything, things are a little bit more quieted down. He's in Rome. He's going to have the crowd. He's going to feel a lot of support. Like, can you blame me for discounting some of the mental challenges? I think for some players, it'd be really mentally challenging. All Jannik Sinner continues to show over and over again is that he's kind of unflappable. So forgive me, but I'm not that worried about the mental stuff. And I think the physical stuff is going to be a huge improvement from what it was last year. All right, two more here. From P Living. Hey, Gill, I see pretty much all the modern one-handers have clay as their best surface like Musetti, Tsitsipas, etc. But clay has notoriously been Federer's weakest surface. In your perspective, what is the cause of this difference between a modern one-hander and a more traditional one like Federer's of the past? Yeah, I mean, Roger's one-hander didn't require as much time. He was much better at taking the ball on the rise because his, quite simply, his dexterity and hand-eye coordination was just so off the charts that he could time the ball better and hit cleaner when he was playing on the rise. Most one-handers don't like that. They like to play on the fall and they need more time. So that's kind of the simple answer. It was a pretty different one-hander, Rogers, compared to, how most of these guys hit it now. And then you have the slice factor. Federer, awesome slice. Musetti, yes, awesome slice. Tsitsipas, not so much. Team, meh. His slice was fine. It helped him a lot when he developed a slice that was at least slightly above average, but it was never great. Stan, good slice. But, not a guy who is going to want to use the slice as a weapon. Stan used the slice because he had to. On the return, got a slice. Certain defensive situations, got a slice. But generally it wasn't I'm going to cut up my opponents on grass with nasty backhand slice. Federer had that. And on clay, you don't really want to do much of that. It doesn't work very well. So that's another aspect of Federerism that sort of goes against that regular one-handed backhand mold. All right, in this last one, do I want to answer this? I don't have it in me. I'm sorry to Jacob, who's a member. Try to ask this next week because I just can't. I can't. It's a big one. It's about tiers, and I don't have the mental capacity right now, and we're going really long. So yeah, let's do that ahead of Roland Garros. Okay, what's next? Rome preview. And then we'll end on some Aix-En-Provence thoughts. Typically, Rome is kind of the cream rises to the crop tournament. Favorites play well there. I just don't know who the favorites even are anymore. And at the end of the day, the Masters 1000 chaos is very, very real. I want to pull up this tweet from Nick Lester, who's one of the best commentators in the biz. Okay, he tweeted this stat that there's now 19 different Masters 1000 champions from 40 events in the post-COVID era. That is wild, folks. So, since COVID, 1 in every 2 Masters 1000s are won by somebody who's never won before? Holy cow. So I just wanted to share that. I don't really have any other point to make off of it other than the fact that I'm low on confidence, right? I'm in bad form. I'm on a losing streak. I am low on confidence on the predictions, and it only makes it even worse when I have weeks like last week where I couldn't take in all the Madrid action after the first 5 days. I was pretty locked in the first 5 days of Madrid, but as soon as I had to go over to France, obviously I completely lost sight of it. So you also kind of feel like you're flying a little bit blind in some cases as well. But we go again. We give it another shot. We start with Jannik Sinner's quarter. He is the top seed. He's got Ruud, Shelton, Tiafoe, Cerundolo, Korda, ADF, and Berrettini. My dark horse is Mariano Navone. My upset alert is Matteo Berrettini. My early popcorn is Sinner versus Navone or China in round 2. Start with Navone. So draw-wise, this isn't really a great-looking pick because Navone would obviously probably have to play Jannik Sinner, but I was very unmoved by the unseeded players in this quarter. I think it's a pretty stacked quarter as far as the seeds go. Very stacked, actually. But the unseededs, I was kind of unmoved by. And Navone, I think he struggled with all the points that he had to defend over the course of February and the start of April. And that was kind of a new experience for him, a new thing for him. And I think it got to him. But I think since a lot of those points have kind of been put past him, I feel like he's been starting to play his best clay court tennis again. I saw it last week in Aix, and I'll talk more about him later, but I just think he's the best of the unseeded players here. Upset alert, Matteo Berrettini. So I actually feel like I may have been onto something last week when I picked him to go to the final in Madrid, but we'll never know because he hurt his oblique, and he should have lost his first match. He won that third set. I forget who he was playing, but he won that third set. Korda, maybe? I forget. No, not Korda. He was injured, and he wasn't serving big at all. But I have on upset alert because these abdomen injuries, they're a nightmare. Matteo has had them over and over again, and usually they spell trouble. They require a lot of rest. Matteo, this is Rome, and he's only played Rome, I think, once in his career. He's always injured for Rome. So if he's like at 70% capacity, he might just play it because he's sick of sitting out this damn tournament, which is a tournament that means so much to him, right? But if he's playing hurt, he's playing hurt. I've got him on upset alert. Watch those serve speeds right away. If they're down, you know he's not right. Early popcorn, Sinner versus Navone Cina. Obviously, Jannik Sinner's return. And by the way, Federico Cina, young Italian. A lot of people have been asking me about him and my thoughts on his game. I'm not there yet. I've watched him a little bit, not enough. I don't have a good opinion on him yet. So when I get there, I'll let you know. Okay, my quarterfinal prediction here is Cerundolo defeats Ruud. Yeah, I'm gonna go against Jannik here because of the match toughness factor, because of the, handling of the nerves and the physical intensity and how it's all kind of new and he's just not used to playing matches. That's it. I think, again, my stance on Sinner is that he will be better prepared to win Roland Garros this year than he was last year. But we're talking about Rome right now. And as far as Rome goes, I think he has a horrendous draw. Horrendous. And Rome might be tough. Mentally, physically, Rome might be tough. I'm going to go with Cerundolo over Ruud. They always play great matches, Francisco and Casper. The head-to-head, I think, is 5-4. And I just feel that Ruud, who beat Cerundolo in Madrid last week, I do think Rome helps Francisco a little bit. Slows it down. Casper's a better server than Francisco. It kind of evens that out a bit. And Ruud has the more intense fatigue factor mentally and physically after winning the 1,000. So I go with Cerundolo this time. We go to Taylor Fritz's quarter. His seeds are De Minaur, Paul, Rublev, Mahach, Menchik, FAA, and Hurkacz. My dark horse here is Matteo Arnaldi. My upset alert is Felix Auger-Aliassime. And my early popcorn is Rublev versus Marozsan Fonseca, round 2. I made Arnaldi my dark horse. He's playing in Italy. You guys know I'm a fan of his game. I think he moves exceptionally well. I like the way he plays on the run. His forehand is big. He can't hit a spot with his serve. Unfortunately, he does come forward. He drops shots well. He's inconsistent because he's kind of a loose cannon. Sometimes he can't control the error count. I don't think his return is all that great yet, but clay helps him in that respect. And while he's been a little bit of a hot and cold player, actually very much a hot and cold player, he might be hot right now because he had a really nice Madrid, made the quarterfinals, beat Coric. Coric has been tough to beat recently. At least on the Challenger Tour. He beat Djokovic. He beat Tiafoe. He lost pretty badly to Draper, but Arnaldi is my dark horse. Wanted to take a break from Fonseca, although Maybe I shouldn't have. I don't know. Just wanted to mix it up and not make Fonseca the dark horse every single time. Upset alert is Felix Auger-Aliassime. I just can't believe how bad it is right now. And so he lost to Juan Manuel Cerundolo 7-5, 6-4 in Madrid. And then he went to Estoril and he lost to Andrea Pellegrino 7-5, 6-4. Pellegrino's outside the top 200. Juan Manuel Cerundolo is 126. It's a 5-match losing streak for Felix. His last win was against Tristan Schoolkate, first round Miami. I just, it's very bad. It's very bad. Is he injured? Is he hurt again? What happened? I don't know what happened. Early popcorn is Rublev versus Marozsan or Fonseca. Rublev is also on a losing streak. He technically made the third round last week. It was because he got a walkover from Monfils. Wasn't that my early popcorn match? Yeah, I don't think my early popcorn match happened in that quarter because Monfils had to give a walkover. Australian Open round 2 rematch potentially, huh? Or he takes on Marozsan, who can also be a really dangerous opponent for seeds, particularly at Masters 1000s. My quarterfinal prediction here is De Minaur defeats Fonseca. Speaking of rematches, these two played in Miami. Alex basically just completely wore down Joao's legs until Joao couldn't really hang anymore. Demon, very simple. This quarter is weak. Alex is beating the guys who he is supposed to beat on clay. Now, very consistently the last 2 years. And I basically have a path for him where he is going to be playing players who he is supposed to beat all the way through to the semis. And that's that. Let's go to Carlos Alcaraz's quarter. Top seeds are Alcaraz, Draper, Rune, Dimitrov, Humbert, Khachanov, Mickelson, Baez. My dark horse here is Luciano Darderi. My upset alert is Hugo Humbert. My early popcorn is Rune versus Comasagna Altmaier. Dark horse Darderi, another Italian. He won Marrakesh to start the clay court season. He hasn't been very good since. I don't love a lot of the unseeded players in this quarter, first of all, so it's not a choice that I'm super thrilled about. But I don't know, he plays Buyun Chauquete first, then he plays Jack Draper, and Bu doesn't love the clay. And I do think it's going to be hard for Draper to come off Madrid physically. I think it will be a challenge for Jack, particularly on this surface, particularly with such a drastic adjustment into conditions that he isn't going to like quite as much. So maybe Darderi, high effort match, grind Jack down, hopefully get sort of a, inconsistent Draper match, and maybe go on a little bit of a run. Upset alert, Hugo Humbert. Still has that, I made him an upset alert in Madrid, and sometimes when these Masters are back-to-back, I can't mix it up as much as I may want to, and Humbert, for me, is going to be the guy most vulnerable here against the winner of Corentin Moutet or Renki Hijikata. It's clay. It can be a struggle for Humbert, always on clay, but the two-handed backhand is not looking good because his right hand is injured, but he still feels like he wants to give it a shot, which I completely understand. He's not going to make it worse by playing. He can compete. He did lose in a third set tiebreak the first round of Madrid, and he lost a close match to Alexei Popyrin in Monte Carlo. So he's at least keeping these matches close, but he is compromised. Early popcorn, Rune versus Comasagna Altmaier. Curious to see what Holger does in Rome. I think it's an important event for him to try to capitalize and solidify what he did in Barcelona. It was always going to be kind of a challenge for him to do that in Madrid, but if he has a good Rome, we're kind of back to, okay, Holger's having not just one good tournament, but a good clay court season which I feel like is just needed for him. Comesaña, Altmaier, both clay court guys. They are rather defensive players. Holger's going to have an opportunity to dictate against either guy, but they are going to move well, and they are both going to make a lot of balls. I like Comesaña's movement. I love his speed, and his serve is underrated. He's got good juice on the serve. Altmaier, I don't think would be as threatening for Holger personally. Let's go to the quarterfinal prediction. I've got Rune defeating Alcaraz. Yeah, I think Holger can do it. This is kind of a vibes thing with Alcaraz. I have a weird feeling that he might have trouble with just the focus and the discipline and the intensity this week in Rome. And I don't know why. I just think there's a lot of noise right now. Jannik's coming back. The documentary just came out. He's coming off of an injury that I don't think will be that severe, but sometimes you got to go vibes, and I feel like Alcaraz just won't be at his best. Holger's played well in Rome throughout his career. I do think the clay courts clarify how he needs to play, how he wants to play. Physically, he should be refreshed, and he's best of three, where I think he's most dangerous. So that's why I'm going Rune. I don't think Carlos would want to lose to Holger twice in a row. Like, that might be an argument against what I just said about Alcaraz being kind of unfocused and undisciplined. So, maybe by the time they get to that quarterfinal, if Alcaraz is playing well, I'll feel differently. But for now, my pick is my pick. Let's go to Alexander Zverev's quarter. It is Zverev, Musetti, Medvedev, Fils, Tsitsipas, Popyrin, Shapovalov, Nakashima. My dark horse is Jiří Lehečka. My upset alert is Arthur Fils. My early popcorn is Fils versus Tsitsipas, third round. Start with Lehečka. Do I have any Czech viewers? Because, I'm a hockey fan, and I think of guys like Jiří, what was his name? Oh, maybe that was a different guy. There are Jiřys in the NHL, and everybody calls them Jiří. Is it Jiří? Because that's what he says on the ATP thing, but this is one of the weirder ones I've ever encountered, in the sense that, I am stunned that he pronounces it Jiří. I would have never expected that, because I've seen this name before pronounced Jiří over and over and over again. I digress. Lehečka is now unseeded after losing a ton of points from Madrid, where he made the semis last year. He's been very under the radar this year. He tends to be. Look, he has too much weaponry and just meat and potatoes, baseline firepower off of both wings to stay quiet. He's going to go on a big run. Now, I don't think I love the clay. I see him as a hard court guy mainly. But when I see Lehečka unseeded, which it's been a while since I have, catches my eye. I don't think that's going to last that long, and I do think a big run will be coming at some point. Upset alert is Arthur Fils. It's mostly down to the draw here. I mean, it's a tough draw. He's got to play either Misha Kecmanovic or Talon Griekspoor, so he's got to be at his best. And also, Fils isn't really a reliability guy. Fils, especially in his first round, he can be off. He can spray. He can lose control. So I never really feel too reluctant to put him on upset alert. And my early popcorn, I also have Fils versus Tsitsipas third round. Now, if Fils is upset, obviously we aren't going to get this, but I did want to point this out because I struggled to come up with any other early popcorn. Fils is 3-0 against Tsitsipas. Now, that includes last week, right? Was that Barcelona? Or was that in Madrid when Tsitsipas played 2 games and retired? Let me check that. Retired right away with illness. That was Barcelona. Yeah, the quarterfinals of Barcelona. Right, and then Tsitsipas lost to Musetti last week. But yeah, if Tsitsipas goes down 4-0 head-to-head, and I don't care that one of them doesn't count. On paper, it's 4-0. That's another thing where, wait, now I'm 0-5 against one 22-year-old, and now I'm 0-4 against another 21-year-old. That can't feel good. So I think that would be an important match for Tsitsipas. Quarterfinal prediction. I'm going to go Musetti defeats Zverev. This would be massive, obviously, for Lorenzo, but he's putting together such consistent clay court results. And I do think he could pretty much completely neutralize Zverev's serve in these conditions, use the drop shot a ton, and just, get crafty on him. And I think Zverev would have some trouble like finding finishes against Musetti for sure, because I never consider Zverev the most clinical of finishers. Final weekend reveal in 3, 2, 1. Cerundolo defeats de Minaur in 2 sets. Musetti over Rune in 3 sets. And Musetti over Cerundolo in 3 sets. Let's go back to the Nick Lester stat. Why not? Another first-time Masters 1000 winner. It's been happening 1 out of every 2 times. I do think Musetti has been knocking on the door. I think he's primed for a breakthrough like this. He's never gone on a huge run in Rome, despite the conditions being good for him, despite being in Italy. But I do think we're looking at a very different Musetti this year, even from last year. He is physically stronger. He is mentally more focused and more intense. He is more clear-headed in his decision-making. So I think he could pull something like this off. And I'm just going to go for it because I'm not feeling overly confident outside of slams when it comes to Zverev and Sinner in this circumstance and Alcaraz right now. And that is that. My Rome predictions. Hopefully we get some more stuff right, although it's just really hard right now. Okay, let's go to some X thoughts to finish this off. First, I want to run through the players really quickly, and then I'll get into some more like day in the life stuff. I'll tell some stories. So Coric wins. It's his 4th Challenger title of the year. And we're only 5 months into the year. I feel like everybody's comment right now is like, why is he still playing Challengers? It's like, all right, let's give the guy a break. He was still outside the top 100 coming into this week. Like, he didn't even make the Roland Garros cut. So I think it's not really fair to get on Coric for playing Challengers. And it's been a good move for him. He needed confidence and he needed wins, and he's done it. Because ultimately, he is way too physical for the Challenger Tour. That was my big takeaway from watching him in all his matches this week. The physicality is so elite. It's tier 1. It's A+. He moves so incredibly well. He never gets tired of running. He plays the same way on the 3rd shot of the rally that he does on the 15th shot of the rally, which is incredible. And the strength when he's on the run to his backhand, like the pace that he hits on his open stance backhand is absurd. So this dude is a real physical specimen. Now, he gets injured a lot, so it's hard to say you want Borna Coric's body over like anybody else's, but when he is healthy and fit, he is ridiculously fit. He's just too physical for these guys at the Challenger level. Stan Wawrinka. I don't have too much to analyze here. We all know how Stan's game is and all that, and that he's just not moving all that well anymore, which is hurting him. Like everything from a tennis standpoint, the serve, the return, the baseline consistency, all that needs to be really good in order for him to win because he's not moving well. And this week it was really good. I think he finally gained some confidence, which had been lacking. It's been interesting to hear Stan talk about how he's playing well in practice and in training, and then in the matches he's not playing well anymore. And it's just sort of a match toughness thing right now. But he finally got some momentum, started to feel good. Clay has always been his best surface. And he became kind of the crowd favorite, the tournament favorite. Here's what I want to say about Stan. Weeks like this are still worth it. They are still worth it. And if you were there and if you were witnessing it, you could understand why Stan still feels like this is worth it. Because he is out there competing for a title. He's got every single person I know it's a small stadium, he's got every single person in the stadium cheering him on passionately. And it's still a quest that feels worthwhile. I mean, at the end of the day, I know it's a challenger, but he's trying to win a tournament for the first time since 2020. And that felt big and important, and it was emotional for him. And it was engaging and intriguing. Like, Stan saved the tournament. French players played horrible. Horrible. So the fact that Stan saved the tournament, from a narrative standpoint, I truly do believe that he was really the one creating all the interest and the buzz in the, around the grounds and all that. That speaks volumes. Okay, Ignacio Buse, young Peruvian player. He's like a perfectly developed player. I think his technique is great off of both wings. The biggest thing that stood out to me was the reliability of his forehand. You never felt like he was going to miss that shot. I like his technique on his serve. I think he moves decent, but he needs to build more. He needs to build more explosivity, honestly. Not just in his movement, also in his ground game. He's just, right now, I think technically speaking, like developmentally, he and his coaches did a great job just refining all of his technique and all of his skills. But I think he needs to get more powerful, both in his movement and in his shot making. Basaveretti had zero clay court resume to speak of coming into the week, and then he made the quarterfinals and ended up losing to Stan. When I say zero clay court resume, I mean none. But it was good to watch Nishesh a little bit. I still think that Nishesh Basaveretti can be a top 10 player if he has it in his legs. He's got so far to go as far as being somebody who moves well enough and is durable enough to play his style and to do it at an elite level, because he's not a blow you off the court weapons guy, but he is a take the ball early, redirect, highly consistent, sort of this suffocating, kind of a throwback offensive style. Look, he's very Djokovician. He really is. But he needs the legs to support that game. I find his racket skills to be awesome. I think he's so talented. It's just about how the legs develop for Basaveretti. Mariano Navone, really great at three things: moving, forehands, backhands. Really great at those three things. He needs to add more dimensions, in my opinion, if he wants to get to the next level. Okay, let's get to some day in the life. So first of all, little backstory. And I think this is worth going over at the end of what is a different Monday Match analysis than what I've ever done since doing this show. I have never done a mailbag and a tournament Masters preview and an analysis and a power rankings, like literally everything in one show. So first of all, on Monday, I get to France on Sunday night, but my luggage gets stuck in Paris. So on Monday morning, what I have to do, instead of recording my mailbag, I have to go back to the Marseille airport and I have to get my luggage because for some reason it was stuck in Paris. And by the way, I had a decision to make between Delta and Air France. Au France, as they would say in France. Or I don't know if I said the air part well. Air France, I think is how they would say it. Anyway, I had that choice, and I'm like, let's go for the experience. Air France, like it'll be more of a thing, and I'll still get my Delta points because they're partners. That was a mistake. Like, I felt like I was playing a road game. I could have been playing a home game, right? I have the Delta app. Everybody speaks, obviously, like better English. Not that you had people who couldn't speak English, but I know my way around Delta. I know what I'm doing. Air France, not so much. So that just added to the whole stress. And I would just say, as a piece of one thing that I learned from this trip is don't play an away game when you can play a home game. Lesson learned. So I go back to the airport on Monday. Then I have to go to site and I meet some people. I check out get a lay of the land, spend some time on site, and also start prepping for the next day. But I'm jet lagged, of course, so I get tired really early. And between going to the airport, going to site, dinner, wasn't any time to get the mailbag done, and jet lag being the other factor. And then now my work schedule starts. So Aix-En-Provence, beautiful country club, just a terrific club, fantastic center court. My broadcast position was beautiful and completely ideal behind the baseline, good distance from the court, so I didn't need to worry about speaking too quietly. I wasn't too worried about disturbing the players, which I think is a pretty big deal because I do want to be able to use my voice and not kind of whisper. And behind the baseline is also your perfect vantage point. I was shaded, which is always great. So the tournament did a fantastic job with that as well. My routine, though, when I'm doing these days, I'm calling 4 matches a day solo. So it is very much an endurance challenge. And my routine essentially is I wake up, I prep my matches. Now, prep gets easier and easier as the week goes on because by the time I go from quarterfinals to semifinals, for example, I've basically done everybody. So I go from brushing up on everybody from scratch to, at a certain point in the tournament, I'm just updating. So I'm saying, oh, well, now this guy's in the semifinals. How many semis has he been in this year or in his career? Or, okay, he's now played another match and he won. Let's look at the stats of that match and see if there's anything notable. You go from having to do everything to just updating these players. The prep gets easier and easier, but I typically do that in the morning. And I was doing that at the hotel we were staying at. Another thing that was sort of a lesson learned is the hotel was outside of the city center. And the way Aix-En-Provence is, and from what I gather, a lot of these kind of French cities are outside of, Paris and stuff, there's not much at all outside of like the center, as they call it, which is the city of Aix-En-Provence. And as soon as you get out of the city, you're suddenly just into like kind of no man's land. This hotel was kind of in no man's land. There wasn't anything around. Why is that relevant? I'm forgetting why I'm talking about that. Oh yeah, I was saying that's why I did all my prep at the hotel. So I wouldn't leave the hotel. I would go to the hotel breakfast. I would do my prep, and then I would go to site. Then I would call 4 matches a day. Play would start at 11. It would end anywhere between 6 p.m. at the earliest, I would say, 8 p.m. at the latest. So it's a long day of calling matches. Then after that, Uber to the center, eat dinner. I found that French dinner, I'm not going to like loop it all in, right? But dinner in Aix-En-Provence reliably took 3 hours. Like, the service was slow. Very, very slow. Is that a European thing? Maybe. I don't know. Very slow service. So then I'd always get back late. So it really is, when you're in the rhythm of this, it's work, dinner, sleep. Work, dinner, sleep. And dinner is obviously fun, right? That's your break to kind of, all right, take your mind out of the intensity of the commentary stuff and, enjoy where you are and enjoy the food. I had one great meal. I had the rest good meals. Then I had one bad meal where it was like 11:30 p.m. We just kind of found like a boissoie because it was open and it was like a random selection and it was bad. It was not good. But I think it's pretty hard to find bad food in Aix. So that was the food. Then after the championship, there was rain. It's a lot of rain. I ended up watching the Madrid final on the plane back. And guess what? My flight from Marseille to Paris was delayed. The connection was tight, and my bag didn't make it again. So in my bag was my camera, okay? that delayed the recording of Monday Match Analysis even further because I had to go back to LAX this morning to retrieve my bag. Again, they went 0 for 2 on my luggage, which is unbelievable. I will say on the food note, can end on this. The cup of coffee I had this morning, and I do my pour over. I make my own coffee at home. I drink it black. Everybody asks me, how do I like my coffee? I always say, is it good coffee? If it's good coffee, I'll take it black. If it's crap coffee, then please, by all means, put some stuff in there so doesn't taste horrible. But anyway, I made my pour over coffee this morning. It was the best tasting cup of coffee that I can ever remember having in my life because and I'm not bagging on France here or Europe for that matter, because I've had the similar experiences all throughout Europe. I won't bag on Europe because most of my coffee, with the exception of 2 espresso shots, were hotel and site at the event. And even in the US, I think there's good coffee in the US. Even in the US, if you only drink coffee at a hotel and at sporting events, you're going to have a lot of bad coffee. But the horribly over-roasted commodity mass-produced espresso, I just lived on it for like a week, and it was all I drank. And notice they hand you over the espresso with sugar because it needs it, because it's bitter and astringent. And I just haven't found... I was in Europe for a while in 2019, and this might have been my first time back in Europe since then. I have horrible impressions, and I've even been to Italy, by the way. I'm not into the coffee culture in Europe. Actually, I don't want to say culture. I like the coffee culture in Europe. I feel like the whole like espresso thing is great. I like espresso. But why is everything so dark and bitter and astringent to the point where it's just the norm to dump sugar in there? And why is there no filter coffee? No filter coffee. Filter coffee is amazing. So, yeah, that was that. So that's the Aix experience. Again, like awesome walkability of the city, terrific country club, Challenger 175 event. Like I would recommend anybody to make a trip at it coming to the Aix-En-Provence Challenger. It's actually free to get into the upper levels, which is amazing given the caliber of tennis you're seeing. That's part of a deal with the government to sort of support the event, that they wanted it to be kind of open to the public. And that is my review of Aix. Loved it. Had a great time. It was very rewarding. It was a little bit stressful getting back and having to do all this stuff, and I apologize for the delay, but I hope it was worth it. The biggest Monday Match Analysis of all time. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.